So we got out of the cocoon. Got Jose de Castro with us. Jose, thank you. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Is that the way we pronounce your name in America? Because that's how I would pronounce it if I met a Spanish person here.
Yeah, yeah, De Castro. Just kind of used to hearing it that way, actually.
And do people call you Jose in the United States, or they call you Jose?
No, no, I think most people have figured out the JH thing at cafes and things like that. Although I do occasionally get a hose.
Oh, it's great. Well, it's better than Joe's. We've also got Andy Smith, our faithful pillar, with us. Hey, Andy, thanks for joining us and supporting me, keeping me awake. James Bodie's with us too, and he's got a blurry. In fact, he's frozen. James is frozen. Tim is just as brave as I am and courageous. He's been through the 25 hours of crossing the world. We didn't do it in a ship, otherwise it would have taken 2 weeks, right? Could you, Jose, could you do me a big favor, a personal favor? Back up all the way, because I'm seeing, before we talk about Ameche and the origin of that, you guys have about 700 logos on one page, and there's Rayo and all that. Give us a quick overview of all that, would you please, so that we know what you guys are doing, because you're doing amazing things.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so we have a lot of projects, but the only real products that we talk about these days are really just three. It's Tropo, Phono, and Ameche. And Tropo, you guys have probably know. We run a cloud service called on Tropo.com, and Tropo is a really great scripting API. We support a bunch of different programming languages, and you can use it to build IVR type stuff. Basically, you can come buy a phone number from us, and then use that phone number to make and receive phone calls, send and receive SMS. Tropo.com basically competes head-to-head with features offered by like Twilio and other people like that. We also have Phono. Phono's amazing. It's basically just some JavaScript that you put into your web app, and it turns your website into a phone. So you can do real-time audio and video, chat, presence, a bunch of other things right from your browser. And it uses WebRTC if it's available, which is really cool. And but if WebRTC is not available, it gracefully scales down to like Flash or a Java applet, and basically just picks the best technology for the browser. And it's all wrapped in a jQuery plugin as well, so it's really easy to use on your websites.
And I have played with the things you've mentioned so far. Oh, my camera just died too. But what is Rayo.org? I never understood what that was.
Yeah, so Rayo is a protocol that we've developed primarily tunneled over XMPP, and it's a third-party call control protocol. So it's not a replacement for SIP or Jingle or anything like that. Basically, the devices still would communicate using SIP or Jingle or whatever signaling protocol they have. Rayo sits in the middle, kind of inside the carrier network, and is able to kind of control calls, mash them together, put them into conferences, things like that. So it's kind of an observer of the network, and then it can kind of exert this kind of third-party control over calls, and also do media control as well. So it can like whisper things into people's ears and do speech recognition and stuff like that.
Okay, cool. So now we're at the point where we can hear a little bit more about Ameche, the origin of the. I guessed the origin of the name right away, by the way. But
did you? Oh, that's great. I think you may be like the second person ever to actually know where that came from.
Question of age. Anyway, run us through this, because I really would like to hear. I get it, but I really want to hear some kind of an example that will give people an image in their minds. Hopefully, you can do that for us.
Great, great. So, for those of you who don't know where the origin comes from, there's a great movie called the History of Alexander Graham Bell, and it was played by a great American actor called Don Ameche. He starred in other movies, some of which you've probably never seen.
Cocoon is the most recent movie he's probably made.
Cocoon. Yeah, Cocoon, and Yeah, yeah, that may be the most popular. Anyways, for years after the movie came out, it was so popular that the slang word for the telephone became Amici in certain circles. So people would be like, ring me on the Amici. So we thought it would be cool throwback to honor him and use that name. So that's what it came from. But so, what is Amici? So we have Troppo, and you know, with Troppo, we tried to do something really different. We didn't want to do the same kind of voice XML request response type model that we have been doing for a long time. There were some clear challenges with doing that. Some of our larger customers were having trouble scaling their applications that way. So with Troppo, we took a different approach, and we said, what would kind of a platform as a service look like for telephony? So what we did is we created Troppo scripting, where people can just take their scripts, whether they be JavaScript or Ruby or whatever, upload them up to our cloud, and that way when you get a call into your application, we kind of execute your code all locally in our data center, and we auto scale it, so you don't have to worry about scaling it. And developers loved it. I mean, they've been signing up by the thousands ever since, and we have over 100,000 developers now on Troppo.com. But the big challenge that we saw was, we would have these hackathons for Troppo, and we'd get some really smart people coming into those hackathons and building amazing things. But then the weekend would be over, and nothing would come of them. And it's because with services like Troppo and Twilio, it makes it so easy to build great things, but then you still have to build a business around it. Like if I build an amazing conferencing service with Troppo, I still then have to register a domain, find out how to sign up users, and then find out how to charge them for my amazing service. So the gap between innovation and like monetization is like way too high. So we started thinking about how to solve that problem. And the result of that is Amici. And what Amici is it's a platform as a service where developers can build these amazing little applications that live on real people's phone calls. So I can pull up my phone, doesn't matter what kind of phone it is. It could be a smartphone or a dumb phone. Dumb phone like that. And then just place a call. And as that call is being connected in the carrier network, Amici plugs in at the core of the carrier network and allows these applications to do really great things. It can reroute your calls, it can record them, it can mash them together with other calls. But the great thing about it is that because it's on real people's phone calls, what we've done with Amici is we've made it so that these developers that write these awesome apps can just post them up on an app store or market them themselves on their own websites, and then basically just watch the cash roll in through revenue share agreements with the carriers that we're going to be rolling out soon. So it's basically the App Store model applied to telephony services.
Questions? So anybody have any questions so far? Everybody following that? Looks like they are. Tim doesn't have any questions. I can see either that or he's frozen.
Tim's asleep.
Is that your dumb phone, Tim?
Yeah, it's a stress phone, and it's ironic because it's actually, I don't know if you can see, but the logo is Panasonic, and today they've announced they're getting out of phones. So
that's awesome.
Not only is it well, I don't know, there's something ironic about that. So yeah,
that'd be awesome. So yeah, I mean, this is really exciting. I mean, we are at Voxeo Labs. I mean, we are by nature just a bunch of tinkerers, and I'm a recovering phone freak myself, and I just remember just being so excited the first time I was able to kind of like play around with telephony on like real calls, like not that I ever busted open a CO box or anything like that at the corner of my neighborhood, but just being able to manipulate the PSTN and being able to manipulate live calls is kind of always been the holy grail, I think, of what I wanted to do. And with Ameche, you can do that. You can hack your phone service, which is amazing, and you don't have to do it through like a silly thing like Google Voice, or like have to roll your own PBX type thing and then give people a new phone number. This is like your real phone number. And with participating carriers signing up now, you'll be able to hack your real phone service if that carrier supports Ameche, and that's really exciting for us.
Yeah, I thought that was fantastic. We had a discussion a couple of days ago. It was one of the late night things where somebody was wanting to know about Asterisk and the toolkit aspect of Asterisk and so on. And what really came out of that is that everybody in the room said what you just said, which is we started on, we're talking, in the beginnings of like 2003, 2004, the interest in Asterisk was to have your own telco, to have your own PBX. That was in a day when renting PBXs were pretty expensive too, by the way.
Yeah.
And then you suddenly any feature you could think of, unless it was totally impossible for some hardware reason, you could do. And people do stuff. I mean, just as a crazy example, the original Skype bridge was a microphone next to a speaker. So somebody absolutely wanted to bridge Skype with SIP, and they had a hardware device that was a mic next to a speaker, and that worked. Obviously not great, but it did work. Then Asterisk came out with the SIP thing, and that was what was the name of that? Tim, you worked on that. You used it, I guess. Oh, you're muted, but it's called.
You mean Skype for Asterisk?
Skype for SFA, yeah, Skype for Asterisk.
That's still running. I see a few people using it right now.
And Skype, just to complete that thought, Skype actually offers a SIP service, as I'm sure you all know, and I've been using it. It's $4.50 a month, so it allows my wife to just use, our phone rings when somebody calls her ultra secret Skype ID. Anyway, so the hacking thing is definitely something that touches everybody who's listening to this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Any examples that would put a clear image? You talk about carriers and so on. What have you got that you could either show or at least tell us that would, as an example, use case?
Yeah, no sure. Sure. I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, the cases are pretty limitless. It's basically a mini PBX that's personal to everyone in the cloud, and then an app store to go along with it. But some of the ones that at the end of the day, what has the carriers excited is obviously the prospect of making more money and moving up the value chain. And so we started coming up with what are some really cool use cases that are also high value, and we came up with a few. The first one I think is pretty exciting. And also really high value. We use Salesforce.com internally at Voxeo as kind of just a sales tool. Yeah, and we've got some really great sales guys, but man, I mean, they'll make all these phone calls and never put them into Salesforce. So we're paying all this money for Salesforce.com, and the analytics are like crap because no one actually bothers to actually go in and say, oh, I spoke to so and so, and this is how long I talked to them. So we thought, wow, I mean, we were already halfway through developing Ameche, and we were like, wow, that's like a 30-line Ameche app to just intercept your call, cross-reference the caller ID of who you're talking to on Salesforce, and if it happens to be a customer, then log the call. Not only log that it happened, but also if your policy allows it, then like record. Hey, yeah, if your policy allows it, then like record the call. And maybe even transcribe it too, because I mean, speech-to-text technology is getting dirt cheap, and we're really banking on that for Ameche as well. I mean, the technology has just gotten so great and so inexpensive.
That's another aspect of the whole Lego thing is that when we all started out in the mid-2000s, the price of a minute was actually not negligible. Now it's actually almost zero, right? So,
yeah.
So that's hackable as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, absolutely. And the other cool thing about Ameche, I don't want to get too salesy on this, but the other cool thing is you don't have to count minutes as a developer. Like if you do stuff on Trapo and Twilio, you're counting minutes, because as a developer, you get charged for usage. Whereas with Ameche, like, the minute already exists. The person's already on the phone. The minute is there, and you're just adding features on top of it, and then monetizing it. So I am so done with counting minutes, like you have no idea. So this is a kind of a breath of fresh air.
So what is the Hello World equivalent if somebody wanted to try to get into this quickly and take a look and get their hands dirty, as we all do? I mean, I've been through Tropo. I know almost nothing, and yet I've done probably most of the things that you can do. I'm not saying they would work well or that they could be production. But by the way, you must know that if you're a developer, and I've said this many times on the VUC, if you're a developer and you open an account with Tropo, you can play around in non-production. You are not charged for minutes unless that's changed. But when you start doing something, obviously you're expected to pay for it if you're selling a service, of course. But as you play around, if you want to experience Tropo.com, I call it Tropo. I'm sorry, you call it Tropo.
Yeah, we like really ambiguous names.
The ones that you have to talk about to see how do you pronounce. Anyway, tropo.com. I've been there for a couple of years, and if I can do it, anyone who's listening to this can do it. If you're not listening, you can do it. How's that? Anybody can do Tropo. So go in there and mess with it because it's great. But what do we do? What's the equivalent of that? In Tropo, you can go in and there's like 5 languages you can use to do it.
Right.
What would be the equivalent Hello World operation that somebody can get into to understand this whole app thing in the call?
Yeah. So this is kind of a phased rollout here. Unfortunately, we don't have a developer SDK on the website yet, but we will soon. But I'll give you a little hints. We actually have some sample code on the website if you want to go to the technology tab. We felt that it was a bit premature to do a big developer thing unless we had enough carriers on board and enough kind of deployment points and enough distribution channel to really get the broader developer community excited. But we will have a private beta program, and Voxeo will be hosting kind of a mini carrier network in the cloud that people can register their soft phones to and simulate adding apps in your real calls. And then that'll be our test bed for early developers wanting to actually test this out. Obviously not as sexy as adding apps in your real calls. But yeah, if you scroll down there a little bit, we've got some code there. That's not quite Hello World, but it's even better than Hello World. That's actually a working Ameche app that logs your Salesforce, all your calls to Salesforce if the person you're talking to is a customer. So you'll see that there's actually a query there. It's actually, this is Node.js code. It's written in JavaScript. And you'll see that it's using 2 libraries at the top. It's importing the Ameche library, and then it's also importing Salesforce utility library as well. And then basically all that's happening there is your code is just waiting for a user, basically a subscriber, to say, hey, I want this app in my call. And that's when the onSubscribe function fires. And then you just sit there waiting for a call to happen. And when a call happens, you look up the caller ID on Salesforce.com, and if it's one of your contacts, then you log that the call happened. And obviously you can get fancy with it. You can post a recording of it. You can pass it through a transcription engine, like I said, and post the recordings. But the point here is it's asynchronous. It's Node.js, so you have access to thousands of open source libraries for every cloud service you can think of. So that's the great thing about Ameche, is we didn't have to go and build connectors for LinkedIn or Facebook or all that. I mean, the Node.js community has already developed all those really good libraries, and we just provided a platform as a service that lets you, mash up all those libraries with telephony.
That's very cool. We're waiting for the API. I'll reserve judgment until I can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Questions or comments from anybody? And
yeah, Jose. If
I told you
one was a Jose, what does a carrier need to do in order to host Ameche from a technical perspective?
Yeah, yeah. So we have two integration methods. Our preferred method is IMS. So we've implemented the ISC interface to interface with the carrier, and that's a standard IMS interface that allows us to be in the signaling path for phone calls, hijack the media if we need to, and also receive device registration events on behalf of every mobile user. And also be in the path for all messaging. So that's MMS and SMS messaging as well. So it's kind of this magic interface in the IMS network that lets you basically intercept all of a subscriber's signaling. So that's for IMS. On the circuit switch network, we basically act as a SIP proxy. So we have most networks have some sort of circuit switch networks have a media gateway that's able to signal calls through an application server over SIP. So basically, we just act as a SIP B2B UA in that case for voice. And then for SMS, for Tropo.com, we actually had to develop this really great piece of technology that we just call our SMS gateway. But really, it's an SMS gateway client that's able to interface with SMSCs. It supports like every protocol you could think of. I mean, we've implemented SMPP, SIP, XMPP, HTTP, a bunch of stuff. So some features are just not available on the circuit switch network, like being able to upgrade a call to video, which we can do in the IMS network, and also some like presence information is also not available on circuit switch, but most of it is. Yeah, and
Okay,
you know, we're not.
That sounds really easy.
Yeah, no, it's super. It's very. It is. It's very straightforward. I mean, it's just one node that we add into the network that does everything. Obviously, carriers are very protective of their network, so it's been a challenge convincing them that this is not a scary thing. But we have created some close relationships with some very influential kind of big companies like Ericsson and Alcatel-Lucent and things like that. We actually have Ameche running in their labs, and that really helps out with the politics at the carriers. Basically, it's like, hey, look, Ericsson thinks it's okay, so you should too. So that's really helped us out.
James is
Right.
nodding. I guess you're.
Yes, so yeah, that's the technical side of things. What about the business model, the commercial side? How does that work, or likely to work? Bearing in mind that you're a technical chap and not a businessy person.
Well, yeah, no, I mean the technology is quite innovative in and of itself, but I think the biggest innovation is on the business model side. You know, the carriers have failed repeatedly at selling network services. They're just not good at it. Period. I give everyone the challenge today to call your phone company and ask the agent on the other side, hey, what services do you have available other than dial tone? And they will rattle off a list of like 100 things that they have readily available that they can sell you, and that you never knew about. And it's because they suck at selling these services. They're just not good at it at all. So what we tried to do with Ameche was to break free these services from the kind of consumer marketing departments at a lot of the carriers, and make it so that the developers themselves can advertise their own applications, and then through OAuth, they can request permission from the carrier to enable these features on people's calls. So I'll go back to the Salesforce.com example. You know, if Salesforce in this case was the developer, well, maybe the next time I log on to Salesforce.com, I see a little banner on their portal that says, hey, for an extra $2 a month, you can automatically log your calls to Salesforce. So I click the banner, and then it says, hey, you know, what provider are you on? Or maybe just ask me for my phone number. And then I'm an AT&T customer. So in that case, I would just get redirected to AT&T.com. I would log in using my standard AT&T credentials, the same ones I use to like check my balance and stuff like that. And I'd be presented with a little, like a Facebook style permission dialog that says, hey, Salesforce wants permission to know when you're on the phone and know who you're talking to. And then once I hit allow, I get redirected back to Salesforce.com, and I'm back to doing whatever I was doing. And that's the model of the web. I mean, OAuth has made it so that these different services along the web can exchange permissions through these access tokens. And so what we've done with Ameche is we've created a consent platform for carriers that allow them to do exactly that. So if I'm a developer, I write a cool app, I can go redirect my users to AT&T. AT&T gets the appropriate legal consent and then redirects them back to me, and now the app is active and deployed. So that's crazy from a business model perspective, because it makes everybody a telco sales guy, whether you shudder to think about that or not. And then there's a revenue share model, obviously, on top of that, where as a developer you get revenue share and the carrier keeps a little bit.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, we're still fielding questions and comments from anybody who's either listening on ZipDX or live with us on the Hangout, where we have, I can't believe it, there's 8 million. This is better than the space jump. There's like 8,472,000 people watching. Who'd have thought? We do have a few people watching, though. Anyone, chime in. I'm watching Twitter, but that's a little complicated. How about IRC VUC on freenode.net? You guys are geeky enough. Type in some of your questions. I'm watching that right now.
I think our core audience is on a plane right now, back from AstroCon.
That's probably true.
Well, I'm still here. I'm still here. I didn't get away.
You should be down there with one of those cards, James, in the lobby showing.
What is that? Oh, look at that. Oh, you got your badge right there.
No, that's the program, right?
That's the program.
Oh, I got a question.
Carl. Thank goodness you're here with us.
I'm not on a plane.
You're not on the plane? Well, just a second. Here's your intro.
And now, here's Carl Fife with one final question.
It's not final. Not final, though, necessarily.
Not final. Yeah, so my question is, we have a comparatively innovative CLEC that, gives a style tone and, gives us our PRI. And every time we've, approached them, to ask for something unusual, because they're already doing some cool and unusual things for us. Every time we ask for something that's maybe outside of their comfort zone, they kind of scratch their head and they say, well, how much money's in it for us? Like what I wanted them to do was to essentially, integrate SMS into the, allow us to have someone else proxy SMS messages, handle the SMSC for the numbers, for our landline numbers, and it's totally possible and you can do it. And I have a company that was willing to handle that side of it, but they're just kind of looking and saying like, well, either you have to pay us a crazy amount of money to write this code, which we get to keep, or we're really not interested in it. And so my experience kind of seems to model your experience, at least the experience you'd had up until recently, in which these legacy carriers are there's just so much inertia in terms of getting them to try something new, to do something innovative. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts or even just numbers that I can sort of dangle in front of them and say, hey, you know what, we'd like to do this. We use Salesforce and we have an asterisk server, and we don't want to have to write that code ourselves. We'd just like to have you guys, magically redirect all that, shoot those messages out to our Salesforce account and help us keep better metrics and blah, 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 all the kind of fancy mashup tools you're describing.
Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but yeah, I mean, so we do have a bunch of use cases.
The question is, how do you convince a stodgy CLEC to that there's a business case to be made for it?
Yeah. So the answer is very slowly. No, but yeah. So it's a long process. It's a long process. We're actually two of the real early adopters of Ameche. I mean, we've been working on them since February, really, and it really is a long process. There's a lot of people to convince, but there have been some learnings, and I can share a few of those with you. First is stop talking to the technical guys first. Get up to the kind of CMO marketing people and get them excited about it. because they actually have more influence than you would think. I mean, the network guys obviously have influence, but you don't want to go and ask an IT guy whether he's going to add a feature. The answer is always going to be no. You want to ask like the marketing guy, get him to say yes first, and then it becomes a little bit easier to go into the network and do that. Second of all, it's an education process. I mean, you have to be prepared with some examples of why this is not scary or even so different. So if you can find other people that are already doing what you're asking for, then it makes it a lot easier. And that's why I think Ameche, after we do the launch with the first set of carriers, will become a lot easier to roll out globally. Because it's a platform, and the platform has a finite set of like things that it can do. I mean, we only have so many APIs, and those APIs can be tested and validated. And once you get the platform certified in the network, then you can just deploy applications on top of it without getting approval for each one. And that's the problem with like asking a carrier to just put an asterisk box in their network, right? There's too much that asterisk can do. It's too low level. So what we've done with like Ameche, is we said no, Ameche can just do these like 12 things. That's it. That's all the developer can do. And with those 12 things, they can implement some amazing use cases, but they also can't hurt the network, and this is why.
Right, do no harm. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How soon are we likely to see the first carrier go live? Sorry,
to do something like just say they have just a very legacy kind of a setup. They're running a DMS 100 or a 5ESS, and they want to be able to integrate this kind of stuff. I mean, how much? Is there a capital cost? Do they have to, is there really is there sort of pre-written interfaces for other people who have already done these integrations?
Yeah. So, it's funny. We've been obviously going after tier 1 carriers for this initial launch, and but we have been talking to a lot of like tier 2, tier 3, and like CLEC type guys, because they're obviously really important too, and oftentimes more innovative and more agile, so to speak. And a lot of those smaller guys will ask us, are you offering this as a service? And it's something we've been thinking about a lot. But as most of the people on this call know, I mean, whenever you're talking about media, you really want to try to keep all your media bits together as much as you can. So we've been kind of avoiding setting any expectations that this will be a service type thing. So Ameche in this case, as with most platforms that you would put into a network, or software, and there is a capital cost obviously to running the software. But depending on how many users you're talking about, it's not huge. And as to the interfaces, I mean, there are standard interfaces for most of this stuff. Like you already mentioned the SMSC. Most SMSCs will talk SMPP is the protocol for those, and we've implemented an SMPP client in our gateway and as part of our APIs, but I'm sure you can find off-the-shelf implementations as well.
I, for one, would move my service instantly to a carrier which has Ameche running. So,
well, that is an endorsement if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, can you give me any clues? When are we likely to see the first Ameche-equipped carriers offering a service so that people like me and all these people out here can join in?
Yeah, so you'll see. So the list of carriers will be kind of trickling in Q1. So it won't be tomorrow. And the reason for that is we have this pesky thing called Mobile World Congress that happens every year, and the carriers bundle up all their like goodies and like cool things that they're going to do for this show, and we just happen to be like 6 months away from it. So, but there are some points along the way where I think we can really work with the marketing teams of the carriers we're already working with to make some early announcements and at least get the SDK out there and invite at least a few thousand developers into like a beta program and then give people new SIMs and stuff like that. For the beta, you're going to need new SIMs. Obviously, when it rolls out globally, when it rolls out, then it'll just work with your regular SIM. But we will be making test SIMs for anyone who wants to be a beta tester to do that. So yes, James, you are on the list. If you
said the magic words, new SIMs.
Right. But only if you learn to say my name properly.
Okay. Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, are you going to be going to Mobile World Congress?
We will. Yeah, we will be there. So yeah, definitely look out for us. We'll have an offsite meeting room. We'll also be at the conference itself, and we've got some exciting surprises in store for Mobile World Congress as well. So.
Ooh, can't wait. I'm excited already.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
So I'm easily excited with these sorts of things.
So I mean, from the developer point of view, the thing I really love about it is the idea that we can do stuff with particularly with mobile. It's always been kind of sort of possible to do stuff with landlines. Carl was saying, well, we've got Asterisk in our office, so we can kind of we could do some of this that way. But the moment your salesman walks out the door with his cell phone and rings a customer on another cell phone, that all of that logging's just like not going anywhere near your Asterisk, so you can't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about Ameche plus Phono and the marriage of that. I mean, some really interesting things are possible. I won't go into too much of the details here, but we are releasing a new version of Phono that will allow your web page to actually register as a mobile subscriber directly into the mobile network. So that means that you could actually have embedded into a website like LinkedIn or Facebook or even your own website an endpoint, basically, that can ring when someone calls your number in addition to your phone, but also be able to make calls, send SMS on behalf of your real mobile number as well. And we actually have a cool demo that we've done with a big North American carrier that they're going to make public soon that lets you just seamlessly transfer your calls between all these different devices. So you can be on your Bluetooth headset in the car, you get home, and you could just basically, with the flick of a finger, just flick the call over to your desktop. And now your call's on your desktop or on your TV, and then you can even upgrade the call to video as well once you're on the laptop. And all of this is just fluid without the call ever getting hung up or anything like that. So it's really exciting times. I think we're just going to see so much amazing stuff.
Yeah, and you haven't even mentioned WebRTC coming into the picture.
I know. I'm so excited. So excited for that.
I'm getting excited too.
I know.
And look, yeah, Tim's almost woken up.
Yeah, I'm almost awake. Look, it's getting dark here though, so.
Yeah. No, WebRTC, for those of you who haven't really been following it too much, is probably the single most exciting thing to come to the web. I'd say for the last 3 years, at least. It basically gives web developers native camera and microphone access in the browser and like Skype quality codecs to go along with it. So it's just super exciting. I mean, it makes it so that really anyone could build their own video chat network. So yeah, I mean, that also creates some interesting challenges for the industry as well. Because now we can easily end up in a situation where we have all these little communication silos now. We already have communication silos, with social networks and things like that. It's only going to get worse with WebRTC. So I think it's a big.
This is where Ameche comes in, because it kind of joins some of these little silos together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does, and but still, identity and addressing is still a big challenge, and that's something Ameche doesn't even attempt to solve. What is my address in this kind of disconnected world? Because WebRTC doesn't specify a signaling protocol. There's no address to speak of. Right. It's just a bunch of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So there's an opportunity there for yet another Voxeo Labs strangely named product to come.
Yeah, and it'll probably end with an O and be hard to pronounce as well. So.
I mean, I think that the web in particular has always been amenable to having multiple identities. You know, my identity on the poker site is not the same as my identity on, you know, GitHub or whatever. So I manage multiple identities, and I think that's the way we're going to see that continue with WebRTC. There'll be some kind of overlap and interaction, but you need to keep managing that, because otherwise, you know, you guys find out about my poker habit.
Right. So see, Tim, you only get away with that, Tim, because you have a PSTN number. If you didn't, then you wouldn't be able to get away with that kind of sharded identity. And that's what people don't realize. They say, oh no, we have fragmented identity now. And it's like, no, because I know if I really have to get in touch with Tim, I know I could always call his number. And if that goes away, then, you know, we're back to the dark ages of communication, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Although when you apply that to somebody like James, it just falls apart, because James has too many numbers. You never know which device.
Well, Ameche does solve that problem, hopefully.
There's another problem here too, which was amply demonstrated by Astricon, which is that, for example, I think a lot of people were in this case. My case, I had a 3G that only worked in the room on the 8th floor. The 3G, you had to walk way outside the hotel, not just walk out the door, but way out of the shadow from downtown. So the 3G, there was no data on the phone. The Wi-Fi, of course, in any hotel is variable. There was one node of Wi-Fi. One of the networks was working well. It was called Astricon, I think, right, Tim? That thing...
No, I could never get that to work.
That's funny, because I must have had a permanent IP or something on it. Because I mean, I must have kept it. I don't know how the.
Yeah, I got it working fine.
It stayed on.
Yeah,
it stayed
you
on, but
just assign yourself a fixed IP address and
but
solve the problem.
anywhere else. My point being, anyway, that was a specific case. But the other problem is you've got all these identities, but you also have all these channels. And believe me, I was trying to do a dinner with 25 people, and I was SMSing. You know, so-and-so, and the person who had the iPhone was getting it if I had data. Otherwise, they weren't, you know, it was a nightmare. And I mean, there was absolutely no single channel. So you have multiple channels, at least 3 or 4 in that particular case, plus, you know, so you could say also Skype or any of the social networks, plus the different identities they have. So it's impossible, really. Something really does have to be figured out at some point if you really want to talk to people.
Yeah, absolutely. What you wanted to do, Randy, is just fire off a message into the cloud aimed at, say, James, and then let the cloud sort out the delivery means, which could be, in my case, any one of about 50 different identities on different modes.
Well, isn't it the case also that the follow me, I mean, there's no cloud follow me. If there was some automatic way of determining up there where you really are going to be listening. Because, by the way, we all have multiple devices, too. This is a nightmare.
We can build this with Ameche, I think. We'll have a jolly good day.
You are a nightmare.
I have to say, this is the product that I have been lying in bed dreaming of for a number of years now, I think.
Not according to the picture we saw.
What picture?
The one with the girls. Jose doesn't know what I'm talking about. It's
probably a good thing.
To
at least in this picture you can see where my hands are, which is what I'm saying about your hands.
Don't make me get that picture up here.
Is there a pink drink involved in this picture? That's my question.
That's funny.
There was a pink drink, but it was slightly later. Yeah.
Anyway,
changing the subject.
I knew that was coming.
Oh, that was coming, yes. Oh, well done. Yeah. Well, I'm tempted, but I can resist.
Anyone else? This is fun. We could go on forever. I'm waking up. Another vodka. I'll be with you guys. But do we have any other questions or comments? Actually, serious business.
So what we haven't talked about is what can happen inside the call. I mean, we've said this is, you know, the tagline is apps in our calls, but we've not actually really said that things can happen inside the calls. So I don't know how much of that you want to say, Jose, and
Yeah, true, true. That's actually a really good point. Yeah, so Ameche primarily lets you do a handful of things, right? One is you know that the call is up, so you have call presence. Also, within a call, you're also in the messaging path as well. So if messages happen during a call, you can infer things from that. Maybe tag a message as being, hey, you sent this picture as part of this conversation, so you can do some interesting mashups that way. And it's also device aware. And what I mean by device aware is that right now most of us only have the one device registered with our mobile carrier, which is our phone, an iPhone or some sort of phone, mobile device like this. But with IMS and Phono and stuff like that, right. We'll have multiple connected devices, and these Ameche apps get notified when each of the devices come online, and what their state is and what their capabilities are. So even some like simple things like, all right. So here's an example. So what an Ameche app that links to your travel site that you use to book your travel, and so it knows that you're traveling, and the second you land and your phone comes online, your Ameche app is going to get an event, right? Because your phone went from being unavailable to available. And you could just have a simple little Ameche app that all it does is whenever your phone comes available, it can check if your flight just landed, and then you can set up a broadcast list of people that you want to be notified when you've landed. So you don't have to get there and like boot up your phone and be like, oh, I landed or whatever. I mean, it could just happen automatically. So it's a silly thing. It's a silly thing, but it's the kind of like it's the lots of simple things that I think are going to make Ameche really popular. Just like on the iPhone, right? I have like 200 apps on here, and they each do like one silly thing. But anyways, like Tim was nice picture. Yeah, so like Tim was.
That's what you cut. Randy's cut himself out of the picture. Great.
Oh, this is the essential on the book.
That's a different picture, that one.
How do you expect me to concentrate with that picture?
Let's get rid of that. I'll keep the other ones for later.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that because you've got control of the media path, you can do little things like whispering in one direction. So somebody sends an SMS, say, yeah, Tim has just sent you an SMS telling you to shut up or something like that.
Right. Or if you have if you can have one that's linked to your calendar, and then mid call, if your call's running late, you can have a little chime or something play into your call to remind you that, hey, you got to get off the phone, whatever. But also more interesting things as well. We're not prepared to announce yet who we're working with on this, but we are teaming up with some speech people to do some in-call hot word detection. So you can actually have the Ameche apps listen for keywords in the call and then trigger cool things. So you can do things like mid-call note-taking and call recording, three-way calling, ad hoc conferencing, and all that stuff using your voice. And that's super exciting too. I mean, and again, this stuff it's nothing new. I mean, people have actually been doing in-call assistance for a while. It's just there hasn't been a platform to do it, and it's been terribly expensive. I mean, the technology is actually super cheap now, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah, I can think of about 20 demonstration apps that I would like to build.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I think is in the same way that Tropo does this, it doesn't have to be the core business of the developer anymore. So if you're a developer of real estate sites, or developer of sites for fast food restaurants, then you can add in some Ameche functionality around your core product and add value to the core product that way, rather than being having to be an absolute telco specialist to get this one thing done, and that being your only business. I think it just broadens the niche, the availability of the 1,000 niches thing. In the same way that the App Store does on the iPhone. You can do all of these little niches on one platform.
Yep.
Have you got physical location linked into it at all? So, for example, I might want to know that my wife has arrived home, or somebody else has just arrived in the pub, perhaps.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yep. So Ameche apps. I should have mentioned that a while ago. Yeah. So Ameche apps are also location aware. You can poll for location, but we're also working with a couple third parties and with a couple carriers as well to see if it's viable at scale to do geofencing as well. So you can, we'll be able to basically, like on a Google map, draw little boxes around certain areas and save that as like a layer, basically points of interest, and then activate that layer inside an Ameche app, so that you get notifications when the subscriber roams in and out of these like points of interest.
Yes, I want to know whether Tim comes within my little geo fence.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can be ready to get him before he gets me.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
That is fascinating stuff. I mean, just
I
thinking
haven't
about
subscribed for that service thing.
Good images. Yeah. Go ahead, Tim. You're not going in the circle.
Yeah, there's so many things you can do with something like a Ameche, as long as you can get over the hurdle of convincing the carriers that they're going to embed it into their system. But from what you're saying, it sounds like you've kind of done that for the first couple, so that's great.
Yeah, it took us a year. But we're there now, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, I could get very excited about this, as you can see from my face.
Any finals from
Jose?
Anyone? Go ahead.
Yeah, Jose, this is Jay Carpenter in Phoenix, and I was kind of curious, your interaction with the carriers. Carriers seem to be kind of very sensitive to intellectual property, and how was that handled in your conversations, etc.?
Well, we handle it by avoiding the topic altogether, as with any kind of IPR discussion. You try not to talk about it, and if you absolutely must, then you get a lawyer involved. But we haven't actually had that issue. We're just software. Our stuff is not unlike anything else the carrier would buy and put into their network, like a Nuance server or a web server or anything they use to build their portals. Just because it's telephony and in the core network doesn't make it any less of a software solution. And that's the point we try to get across right off the bat. We're not Ericsson. We're not looking to sell you $1 billion worth of equipment. We're just selling you software, and then we're going to help you deploy that software in your network. And then we'll work with all your vendors to make sure that it works properly and lives up to your SLAs. And I think when you put it in that lens, it just becomes less of an issue, that's basically it. And obviously, any applications the carriers build is their IP, right? We're not looking to own all the apps. We're just a platform, and actually, that's been a kind of a revelation for us. Is we've always been a platform provider, and we've traditionally avoided being in the app business. But in this instance with Ameche, it was clear that these carriers wanted our help to build great applications. So we're actually building up a pretty great team of app developers kind of internally to kind of seed the marketplace with some really cool apps. And then over time, obviously, we'll open it up to all developers, and then it'll become less important for us to be there writing apps.
Actually, this is really fascinating stuff, and it occurs to me, it becomes suddenly obvious after the lack of sleep and all that. But carriers obviously have been totally disrupted by their model by, for example, printing money by charging for SMS. That era is almost over, right? Because there's so many ways to get around it now. I mean, you got to love Apple's. I don't love everything they do, but when they added messages, my wife and I can exchange messages all day free through Wi-Fi or even 3G.
I had that revelation on the plane. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I keep getting those messages now saying, oh, your carrier may charge. But my point is, anyway, that they're losing revenue there. like crazy. There's competition in this country. I won't go into details, but you know that there's an operator that has come in and just cut everything in so that it's less than half cost, which means that all of the 3 other carriers have had to cut their prices by half. I mean, think if that happened in the U.S. So they're losing a lot of profit margin here. So they've got to be racking their brains for things like what you're just talking about. They actually must be excited, the carriers. And I mean, it takes a lot to get them excited. They just want money.
They are, and that goes back to my previous comment. It's that the marketing guys are super excited for Ameche, and you know, now it's just you know, fighting the good fight with the network teams to you know, realize that this isn't something so scary.
I think the good news on that front is it's kind of what IMS was made for. You know, the whole rationale for IMS was in large part to enable this kind of thing, maybe not exactly done this way with this business model, but technically this kind of stuff. So, you know, it should fit in just nicely.
You know, that's an awesome point, Tim, because I think it's also worth mentioning for anyone in this space looking to sell stuff to carriers as well. I mean, IMS has been the promise for a long time. As you know, IMS has this fantastic ROI story because it converges cable and fixed line and mobile into a pure IP backbone, and makes it so that all these redundant services can be consolidated, and it's huge cost savings for the carriers. But it's always been a technology play from an ROI perspective, and the marketing people at these carriers just don't understand what all the excitement is for IMS, you know, because there's nothing in it for them. So we've actually been able to go into some really large carriers and talk to their marketing teams and say, hey, Ameche turns your IMS into an app platform. And then you can deliver these services really quickly without negotiating with your IT department for every single app. And they're like, oh my God, I get it now. I get why we need IMS, because IMS is like a service enablement, blah, 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 and all that stuff. So it's, if anything, you know, we've been able to kind of create a business case for IMS that that goes beyond just kind of consolidating data centers. You know? So that's that was kind of a big awakening for us as well. What do you have there?
This is what they see.
Oh, it's dollars.
Actually, it's a 10. Anything further, because we're at the hour mark, and some of us are needing to restore ourselves with nourishment.
Just one comment. I think you're in the right business. In other words, I think you're in the business of selling the shovels, not digging for the gold. I think that I'd rather be in your business than the other one. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Well played.
Great comment, Carl. And that brings us to a close. You got the last word. Thank you, Carl. Jose, thanks. I hope you'll come back. It's great to have anybody from Voxeo Labs, who is one of our sponsors, and we appreciate that. But they're also doing some really interesting stuff, and I appreciate your time with that. Tim is one of our pillars too. Thank you, Tim, for all you've done for us. Who's he pointing to? Oh, that's Tim. Well, I guess it varies depending. Anyway, that's all for now from the Hangout. You can catch us on VUC.me. We're going to close the video. The conference continues with the mature audiences only version. Thank you.